Please be seated. Convener, Mrs. Middleton, distinguished guests, staff and pupils. It is with great pleasure, pride and a proper sense of occasion that I welcome you here to mark this new chapter in the long history of our school. Out of the biggest tragedy to afflict the school have emerged new facilities which provide a modern environment within a magnificent historical exterior. Facilities which combine new technologies with all of the stability and constancy of the past. In my view, society's investment in education brings long-term as well as short-term benefits. The longer-term benefits being more difficult to separate and quantify. Personally, the past 5 years have afforded me the rare professional privilege of close involvement in the immediately tangible short-term objective of planning and helping to rebuild such a famous school. As in the past, when the school always seemed greater than the sum of its parts, the new Aberdeen Grammar School will be a major and lasting asset to Aberdeen, to Grampian, and indeed to Scotland. In these circumstances, it is a great honour to introduce the convener of Grampian Regional Council, Councillor Robert Middleton, JP, a past chairman of the Education Committee, and indeed a former pupil. Sir, it is my very pleasant duty to request that you link past, present and future by formally opening the rebuilt school. Convener Middleton.
Mr. Johnston, staff and pupils of the grammar school, ladies and gentlemen, not many years ago, on the 2nd of July 1986 to be precise, I along with many others stood in Whitehall Place and watched the smouldering embers of the main building of this school. I with a particular sadness, a particular personal sadness, looked at the building which had given me some happy years in a most formative period of my youth. I saw the corridors I had trod, the library in which I'd studied, the classrooms in which I'd tried to widen my knowledge, sometimes not all that successfully, the whole structure that was known to me as a grammar school being turned into a blackened, burnt-out shell. Not a happy day. However, before going on to talk of that day and the days that came before that, can I first of all congratulate the builders who have so faithfully interpreted the wishes of the architect in producing a new school that I hope will, for many years to come, be the fount of knowledge, be the source of fond memories for many generations of young men and young women. But I particularly must also congratulate the architect, Ian Mackey, for the most thought-provoking, interesting, futuristic even approach that he's had to redesigning the interior of this building whilst maintaining the external fabric. It is well suited to the 1990s, and I'm sure will be well suited and well thought of well into the 21st century. And I congratulate all of those people who've been involved in the rebuilding of the grammar school for that. However, let's explore the grammar school. What is it? What was it? That it's an institution of learning is well known. That it was produced, thought of, created in a much earlier time, in 1256 to be exact. That is the earliest records of the grammar school, when the St. Nicholas Church statutes record the appointment of a master to it. A place that had been created, therefore, for the sons of the boroughs of the city to be educated in Maths and Latin, so that they could meet the commercial needs at a time when industrial and commercial expansion was taking place in Europe. Obviously, the founders of the school were men who showed great foresight when they produced a seat of learning, well suited to the needs of the day, when Aberdeen was trading and involving itself in commerce with all the countries along the North Sea seaboard, and further afield into Europe. An interesting time which produced the means whereby young men could be fitted to meet the challenges of that early age. We cannot honestly say that the school at that time was on this site, because it wasn't. Indeed, it was down in School Hill, or what is today known as School Hill, much closer to another seat of learning. I'm not quite sure how you treat it nowadays, but we just didn't mention it in my day. What is important, of course, is that through the years the grammar school has developed in a number of sites throughout its 700 years of history within the city of Aberdeen. But the present school and the present site only arrived here in 1861. And it's interesting to note that at that time, arguments were used for trying to site it in Skene Square, Justice Mill Lane, Ferry Hill, and Albert Terrace, amongst other places. And indeed, when it was decided to build in the Westfield Model Gardens, which this place was then known as, it was condemned as being too remote from the city centre of that time. However, the building began in 1861 and it was completed in 1863, which reflected that they took a lot less time to complete the whole school than they've done to do the rebuilding of just part of the building. The town council at the time awarded a premium of £100 to the best plan for the grammar school, to the designer of Mr. George Firth of Edinburgh, and a second premium of £50 to Mr. Matthews of Aberdeen. It's interesting to note that even in those days, such important matters were not arrived at without some controversy. Articles in the local press at the time would tend to suggest that there were better examples or better designs on offer, and that the town council hadn't picked the best one. Those of us who have viewed this building over most of this century would say that what the town council at the time produced really wasn't all that bad. It's also interesting to note that even after it had been built on this site, controversy ranged in relation to the types of subjects that were to be taught in the school, the range of curriculum and the competition, and indeed pressure coming from another two schools in the city, the Central School and Robert Gordon's College. Over the whole of the period since 1863, change has taken place to this school, and indeed going back to the very beginning, to 1256. Change, educational change, social change, cultural change, has been the hallmark of the success of this school as an institute of learning adapting to the times. The relationship that existed between pupils of the grammar school and their masters, and indeed between pupils and the town council, has until comparatively recent times not been always of the best. It was not unknown for pupils of this school to behave in an unruly fashion, and indeed they did from time to time lock themselves into the school buildings when they were arguing about such things as school holidays. And there was at least one occasion when the town council had to call out the militia against them. I think when we talk about problems in modern day society, I think, ladies and gentlemen, that sometimes those present day problems can pale into insignificance, since I can't, in my period of time as a councillor in the city of Aberdeen, remember who went to call the police out because of riotous assembly in any of our schools, nor indeed the militia, or the Gordon Highlanders for that matter. Well, the most important thing that should be recognised is that over the centuries, the grammar school and education in the city of Aberdeen has had to adapt, has had to change to meet the pace and the needs of the time in which it lives. Education is an ongoing process. It is in a constant state of change, and indeed it should be. Show me a country, an organisation, a society that lives solely in the past without looking to the future, and I will show you a society or an organisation that is doomed. History is very important. Indeed, it's one of my most favourite subjects. But history is only important in that we should be glancing back at it to see where we made mistakes in the past and using that knowledge, that experience to prevent us from making the same mistakes in the future. Education, therefore, is not even about today. Education in the most progressive societies is about tomorrow. And I hope that that lesson is well taken in this school, not only in this school, but throughout all our educational establishments in the region. Because in some ways, what educationists were trying to do in the 13th century, and they were reasonably successful at it, we today are trying to do again. Europe is again important to us. Tariff barriers will be done away with at the end of this year. We will be able again to openly and freely trade with all the countries of the European community. A marketplace that has to service the needs of some 330 million people. A place therefore of challenges and opportunities. But we can only fully meet everything that means if we are trained, if we are educated towards it. I would say that before the turn of this century, it should be the aim of educationists in this country to ensure that every young person leaving school should have some knowledge of a continental language. Personally, preferably French, I suppose, since you can speak English and French. There's hardly a place in the world that you can't travel to and make yourself understood in. But I would recognise that some people in the audience might think that other languages are just as important. That's necessary for tomorrow. It's necessary because if we are to continue at the level of economic progress that we've been fortunate to experience over the last 20 years in Grampian, then we have to be ready for the changes that are taking place. It's pointless at the present moment trying to approach Europe with the attitudes of the 1980s or even 1990, since things are changing there so rapidly. What we have to be able to do is to anticipate what the needs of Aberdeen, of Grampian, of Europe, of the world are going to be at the turn of the century and prepare our young people for that. That, in my opinion, is what education is about. My own experience in this place happened during the 1940s. That'll give you a clue as to my age. When I came to this school, it was a fee-paying school. I was one of the earlier busted pupils, but most of the people in this school had arrived here because their parents had been able to pay for the privilege of coming to this place. That served the needs of an earlier time. But during the 40s when I was here, they'd seen fit to allow 12-year-old boys to come in here who'd passed one rather silly smart aleck examination, known as the 11 plus, and another bursary entrance examination. I appear to have met both these criteria with sufficiently high marks to warrant their attention and arrived in this place. During the time that I was here, a further change took place. Fee paying was done away with, and what was put in this place was the 11 plus system of examination again, which again cleaned off the top and allowed them in here and into the old central school and the high school for girls. That was a method of entry into what was known as senior secondary education right through the 40s, the 50s, and most of the 60s. We also in the 50s and 60s had an entrance examination to our lower or primary school, a 4 plus examination, would you know, an examination that determined that in the 4th year of a child's life, a boy's life, as far as this school was concerned, they were seen as fit for entry to this place for the whole of their school life. That was stopped in the 1960s. And then at the end of the 60s, by which time I was chairman of the Education Committee of the Aberdeen Town Council, charged along with my colleagues in the Education Committee to change education, to introduce a system of comprehensive education throughout the whole city of Aberdeen. It was our remit to provide a system of education that gave equal educational opportunities for all. It would not wipe out the examination system, but it certainly would be geared to not determining what a child's future educational needs would be at the age of 11. It would allow through natural progress through the years to find out by a whole variety of means, including exams, just exactly what a young boy or a young girl was capable of. That's how we approached this whole matter of education in the 60s. There were some unkind people about who suggested that what we were trying to do was to destroy the system that existed, the system of selective senior secondary education. Not so. My experience in the grammar school, as I said earlier, where I had the opportunity of getting a wider educational experience than other youngsters were getting, was something that stayed with me right into my adulthood. I was conscious that that kind of opportunity should be available to everyone. I still believe that. And those people who thought that we shouldn't change really were behaving in much the same way as other people have done throughout the centuries in relation to education and so many other things. They wanted to keep things as they were. That's why I'm quite sure as the years progress, many more changes will befall, will benefit the grammar school and indeed all our educational establishments. What we require are people of vision, people with the commitment and with the capability of grasping the opportunities of making these changes when they arise, or indeed being really progressive by being in advance of these changes. That's what I wish for education in Grampian, as I've always wished. That's what I wish the grammar school. That's what I wish all the young men and young women who come here to be educated. I would ask that all of you who study here open your minds, take in everything that is being put to you, learn from your experiences. I'm quite sure you'll find it will benefit you in years to come, given the kind of approach to education that those of us responsible for such matters at the present moment, I hope, have. I'd like to take the opportunity of wishing staff, pupils, indeed everyone concerned with the grammar school, the very best of good fortune for the future. It now gives me great pleasure to declare the new grammar school open, and in so doing, present to you, Mr. Johnson, an album of photographs of the school. It's not all that we're going to be presenting, but that is as much as I can hand over at this point. There is, of course, the most beautiful plaque and photographs in the library. I want to thank the Doric Construction Company for that, and I do so in public. Thank you very much.
afternoon. Today, as we enjoy the reopening of the far down section of the grammar school, we should recognise that all this was made possible only through the hard work of a great many people, whom I wish to thank on behalf of the school. We would like to show our appreciation to the building team, namely the electrical engineers, mechanical services engineers, the quantity surveying section, and in particular the project architect, Mr. Ian Mackey, and the clerk of works, Mr. Sandy Watson, who have been involved in the rebuild from the very beginning. The construction team are all Grampian Regional Council employees. We are also very grateful to the main contractor involved, Doric Construction Company Limited, part of Robertson and Elgin Limited, and the structural engineers W.A. Fairhurst and Partners. We wish to thank Grampian Direct Services for catering this event, and we are very grateful to Mr. Foster and the members of the school band for playing for us today. While it was difficult for those involved in the rebuild to carry out construction in a working school environment, it has also created problems for staff and pupils who have all shown a great deal of patience and cooperation. Perhaps most noticeably, Mrs. Brown of the music department, who deserves a special mention for her sense of humour as she negotiated quiet spells to conduct music classes while construction was in progress below in the East Block. she has at least been spared the disruption of moving. Our thanks also to our janitors, especially Ron Folger, our head janitor, who's worked tremendously hard during the rebuild and in preparation of today. Finally, we're indebted to Granby Neutral Council's Education Committee, and in particular Councillor Middleton, for speaking today. And I wish to present Councillor Middleton as a token of our appreciation.
Whereas actually it's much lower. And actually when we go up to the library, you'll notice that we've been able to use the space for the moment, we intend to show you a small classroom that's here to convince you that it's not all high-tech and big spaces. There is a small classroom. It's a room of education.
Middle was medium way between the wide and the zoom will be fine. Well done, Hal. Thanks. Must have been nervous as anything.
Combinations of staff and in service days, or combinations of pupils when several groups may be gathered to hear a particular lecturer or to attend a particular event. Now, rather than just show you an empty room, I don't know how this will go, but higher modern studies pupils wanted to stage a debate. So you'll find that the room is occupied, and I suppose it is one of the usages, there should be up to 60 of them. But we'll try just to pass through it if you don't mind. We'll just go down the side. There's a door at the bottom which will take us into the next facility along, which is the drama suite. So effectively we'll go down through the lecture theatre, through the drama suite and back out before we go to another floor.
Are we allowed to enter the debate?
Well,
particularly on the health service, which I'm sure very dangerous issue. But
I think any politician will talk about that.
is an impossibility in these troubled times. The opposition may say that to pay for the National Health Service we can raise taxes. Perhaps we should, but the great British public...
Floor arrangement, and the ceiling will be different any time we're up the side. So at the moment we're heading upstairs, we're going into the library, and we'll spend some time there. Among other things, we'll have a look at the plaque, which commemorates this occasion. Through the archway of the sanctum, where some of the treasures will be located, and certainly the plaque to which the convenient offices. In terms of design, the library obviously has good resources down the middle, but literally plugging into other sources of information and data. And off the library, there's a careers base in there for the careers advisor to operate. And the mirror image of it, that was my which is intended to be a teacher's base, so the teachers can also access the various resources. So you're very welcome to have a key in there if you like.
From the fire.
These were elsewhere at the time. These are annual prizes.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is an opportunity for something
Between here and a display case in my office, I think we've managed to fit. This is an attempt to link us to the past as well as obviously the present and the future out in the main part of the library. And the plaque and the border photos is seen there. 3 photos representing the past, 3 representing the fire in the middle, and 3 taken of the school just 10 days ago. I don't know whether you want any photos for them.
Living at Black Mill, you see, it's probably useful.
If you could hold it at the top of the album.
building, we raised the back, which created that wall, and therefore created a lot more floor space, constant north light through the wood fence and from the windows and that.
They get their money.
They got the money for their job, yeah. I would say they get more than the project. I'm sure. Come on.
Yes, sir. Obviously.
Moira, I don't know whether you want to add anything to that. Moira Leaper, principal teacher of Aberdeen School.
I would just say we've got this magnificent base, but we are seldom in it, in fact, because we put it in our skills.
Andrew's stuck.
Are in fact unable to take rugby at the moment, so instead of being in the field, standing watching, they're here, normally in learning support on an afternoon. They could be in the new library now, but until that becomes a...
Yes, please do.
Yes, should we just...
Because of its location, it's in the rebuild. In terms of highlights, it's in the refurbishment. Right, if we could move along again. So, this is the general theme. Well, no. That's right. We've two interview rooms in this floor because the guidance staff are in a fairly restricted.
It's only 2,000. And what is it in a sentence prepares pupils for skills they will need in adulthood? Budgeting. How to budget for a family of 4. The home theme runs right through the 2 years of the course. And
Well, I'm sure you've got something.
Well,
I'm waiting. Yeah. Come on.
I'm not tossing it.
Could the two against the motion please explain why they back up the ability of trust status hospitals to have their own pay rates? Because there's no way you can guarantee that there would be an equal distribution of experienced staff all over the country. The best staff would go to the best profiting hospitals. That wouldn't spell the end for the NHS, but definitely spell the end for the principle of uniform healthcare.
Let's say in some areas, that's a good thing. In Aberdeen, for instance, we have got a severe shortage of medical secretaries from the oil industry taking on secretaries. If we can increase our pay for them, that means that they'll be attracted